Chapter 39. Mr. Samuel Weller, being entrusted with a mission of love, proceeds to execute it, with what success will hereinafter appear. During the whole of next day, Sam kept Mr. Winkle steadily in sight, fully determined not to take his eyes off him for one instant, until he should receive express instructions from the fountainhead. However disagreeable Sam's very close watch and great vigilance were to Mr. Winkle, he thought it better to bear with them than, by any act of violent opposition, to hazard being carried away by force, which Mr. Weller more than once strongly hinted was the line of conduct that a strict sense of duty prompted him to pursue. There is little reason to doubt that Sam would very speedily have quieted his scruples by bearing Mr. Winkle back to Bath, bound hand and foot, had not Mr. Pickwick's prompt attention to the note, which Dowler had undertaken to deliver, forestalled any such proceeding. In short, at 8 o'clock in the evening, Mr. Pickwick himself walked into the coffee-room of the Bush Tavern, and told Sam with a smile, to his very great relief, that he had done quite right, and it was unnecessary for him to mount guard any longer. "I thought it better to come myself," said Mr. Pickwick, addressing Mr. Winkle, as Sam disencumbered him of his great coat and travelling shawl, "to ascertain, before I gave my consent to Sam's employment in this matter, that you are quite in earnest and serious with respect to this young lady." "Serious, from my heart, from my soul," returned Mr. Winkle, with great energy. "Remember," said Mr. Pickwick, with beaming eyes, "we met her at our excellent and hospitable friend's, Winkle. It would be an ill return to tamper lightly, and without due consideration, with this young lady's affections. I'll not allow that, sir. I'll not allow it." "I have no such intention, indeed," exclaimed Mr. Winkle warmly. "I have considered the matter well, for a long time, and I feel that my happiness is bound up in her." "That's what we call tying it up in a small parcel, sir," interposed Mr. Weller, with an agreeable smile. Mr. Winkle looked somewhat stern at this interruption, and Mr. Pickwick angrily requested his attendant not to jest with one of the best feelings of our nature, to which Sam replied that he wouldn't if he was aware on it, but there were so many on 'em that he hardly knowed which one was the best vunge when he heard 'em mentioned. Mr. Winkle then recounted what had passed between himself and Mr. Ben Allen relative to Arabella, stated that his object was to gain an interview with the young lady and make a formal disclosure of his passion, and declared his conviction, founded on certain dark hints and mutterings of the aforesaid Ben, that wherever she was at present immured, it was somewhere near the Downs, and this was his whole stock of knowledge or suspicion upon the subject. With this very slight clue to guide him, it was determined that Mr. Weller should start next morning on an expedition of discovery. It was also arranged that Mr. Pickwick and Mr. Winkle, who were less confident of their powers, should parade the town meanwhile, and accidentally drop in upon Mr. Bob Sawyer in the course of the day, in the hope of seeing or hearing something of the young lady's whereabout. Accordingly, next morning, Sam Weller issued forth upon his quest, in no way daunted by the very discouraging prospect before him, and away he walked, up one street and down another. We were going to say up one hill and down another, only it's all uphill at Clifton, without meeting with anything or anybody that tended to throw the faintest light upon the matter in hand. Many were the colloquies into which Sam entered with grooms who were airing horses on roads, and nursemaids who were airing children in lanes, but nothing could Sam elicit from either the first mentioned or the last, which bore the slightest reference to the object of his artfully prosecuted inquiries. There were a great many young ladies in a great many houses, the greater part whereof were shrewdly suspected by the male and female domestics to be deeply attached to somebody, or perfectly ready to become so if opportunity offered. But as none among these young ladies was Miss Arabella Allen, the information left Sam at exactly the old point of wisdom at which he had stood before. Sam struggled across the downs against a good high wind, wondering whether it was always necessary to hold your hat on with both hands in that part of the country, and came to a shady by-place, about which were sprinkled several little villas of quiet and secluded appearance. Outside a stable door at the bottom of a long back lane without a thoroughfare, a groom in undress was idling about, apparently persuading himself that he was doing something with a spade and a wheelbarrow. We may remark in this place that we have scarcely ever seen a groom near a stable in his lazy moments who has not been, to a greater or less extent, the victim of this singular delusion. Sam thought he might as well talk to this groom as to anyone else, especially as he was very tired with walking, and there was a good large stone just opposite the wheelbarrow. So he strolled down the lane, and, seating himself on the stone, opened a conversation with the ease and freedom for which he was remarkable. "Morning, old friend," said Sam. "Afternoon, you mean," replied the groom, casting a surly look at Sam. "You're really right, old friend," said Sam. "I do mean afternoon. How are you?" "Why, I don't find myself much the better for seeing you," replied the ill-tempered groom. "That's really all that is," said Sam. "Well, you look so uncommon cheerful, and seem altogether so lively, that it does plunge out good to see you." The surly groom looked surlier still at this, but not sufficiently so to produce any effect upon Sam, who immediately inquired, with a countenance of great anxiety, whether his master's name was not Walker. "No, it ain't," said the groom. "Nor Brown, I suppose?" said Sam. "No, it ain't." "Nor Wilson?" "No, nor that neither," said the groom. "Well," replied Sam, "then I'm mistaken, and he hasn't got the honour of my acquaintance, which I thought he had." "Don't fight here at a compliment to me," said Sam, as the groom wheeled in the barrow and prepared to shut the gate. "Easy for ceremony, old boy. I'll excuse you." "I'd knock your head off for half a crown," said the surly groom, bolting one half of the gate. "Couldn't afford to have it done on those terms," rejoined Sam. "It'd be worth a life's board wages at least to you, and it'd be cheap at that. Make my compliments indoors, tell them not to wait dinner for me, and say they needn't mind putting by any, for it'll be cold afore I come in." In reply to this, the groom, waxing very wroth, muttered a desire to damage somebody's head, but disappeared without carrying it into execution, slamming the door angrily after him, and wholly unheeding Sam's affectionate request that he would leave him a lock of his hair before he went. Sam continued to sit on the large stone, meditating upon what was best to be done, and revolving in his mind a plan for knocking at all the doors within 5 miles of Bristol, taking them at 150 or 200 a day, and endeavoring to find Miss Arabella by that expedient, when accident all of a sudden threw in his way what he might have sat there for a 12-month, and yet not found without it. Into the lane where he sat there opened 3 or 4 garden gates, belonging to as many houses, which, though detached from each other, were only separated by their gardens. As these were large and long, and well planted with trees, the houses were not only at some distance off, but the greater part of them were nearly concealed from view. Sam was sitting with his eyes fixed upon the dust heap outside the next gate to that by which the groom had disappeared, profoundly turning over in his mind the difficulties of his present undertaking, when the gate opened, and a female servant came out into the lane to shake some bedside carpets. Sam was so very busy with his own thoughts that it is probable he would have taken no more notice of the young woman than just raising his head and remarking that she had a very neat and pretty figure, if his feelings of gallantry had not been most strongly roused by observing that she had no one to help her, and that the carpets seemed too heavy for her single strength. Mr. Weller was a gentleman of great gallantry in his own way, and he no sooner remarked the circumstance than he hastily rose from the large stone and advanced towards her. "My dear," said Sam, sliding up with an air of great respect, "you'll spoil that really pretty figure out of all proportion if you shake the carpets by yourself. Let me help you." The young lady, who had been coyly affecting not to know that a gentleman was so near, turned round as Sam spoke. No doubt, indeed she said so afterwards, to decline this offer from a perfect stranger, when instead of speaking, she started back and uttered a half-suppressed scream. Sam was scarcely less staggered, for in the countenance of the well-shaped female servant he beheld the very features of his Valentine, the pretty housemaid from Mr. Nupkins. "Why, Mary, my dear," said Sam. "Lawk, Mr. Weller," said Mary, "how you do frighten one." Sam made no verbal answer to this complaint, nor can we precisely say what reply he did make. We merely know that after a short pause Mary said, "Lord, do it done, Mr. Weller," and that his hat had fallen off a few moments before, from both of which tokens we should be disposed to infer that one kiss or more had passed between the parties. "Why, how did you come here?" said Mary, when the conversation to which this interruption had been offered was resumed. "Of course I came to look after you, my darling," replied Mr. Weller, for once permitting his passion to get the better of his veracity. "And how did you know I was here?" inquired Mary, Who could have told you that I took another service at Ipswich, and that they afterwards moved all the way here? Who could have told you that, Mr. Weller?" "Ah, to be sure," said Sam with a cunning look. "That's the point. Who could have told me that?" "It wasn't Mr. Muzzle, was it?" inquired Mary. "Oh, no," replied Sam, with a solemn shake of the head. "It warn't him." "It must have been the cook," said Mary. "Of course it must," said Sam. "Well, I never heard the like of that," exclaimed Mary. "No more did I," said Sam. "But Mary, my dear." Here Sam's manner grew extremely affectionate. "Mary, my dear, I've got another affair on hand as is really pressing. There's one of my governor's friends, Mr. Winkle. You remember him?" "Him in the green coat?" said Mary. "Oh, yes, I remember him." "Well," said Sam, "he's in a horrid state of love, regularly confoozled, and done over with it." "Law!" interposed Mary. "Yes," said Sam, "but that's nothing if we could only find out the young woman." And here Sam, with many digressions upon the personal beauty of Mary, and the unspeakable tortures he had experienced since he last saw her, gave a faithful account of Mr. Winkle's present predicament. "Well," said Mary, "I never did." "Of course not," said Sam, "and nobody never did, nor never will neither. And here I am walking about like the wandering Jew, a sporting character you perhaps have heard on, Mary, my dear, as was always doing a match in time, and never went to sleep, looking out of this here Miss Arabella Allen." "Miss who?" said Mary in great astonishment. "Miss Arabella Allen," said Sam. "Goodness gracious," said Mary, pointing to the garden door which the sulky groom had locked after him. "Why, it's that very house. She's been living there these 6 weeks. The upper housemaid, which is lady's maid too, told me all about it over the wash-house palings before the family was out of bed one morning." "What, the wedding house next door to you?" said Sam. "The very next," replied Mary. Mr. Weller was so deeply overcome at receiving this intelligence that he found it absolutely necessary to cling to his fair informant for support, and divers little love passages had passed between them before he was sufficiently collected to return to the subject. "Well," said Sam at length, "if this don't beat cockfighting, nothing never will, as the Lord Mayor said when the Chief Secretary of State proposed his missus's health after dinner. That wedding next house. Why, I've got a message to her as I've been trying all day to deliver." "Ah," said Mary, "but you can't deliver it now, because she only walks in the garden in the evening, and then only for a very little time. She never goes out without the old lady." Sam ruminated for a few moments, and finally hit upon the following plan of operations: that he should return just at dusk, the time at which Arabella invariably took her walk, and being admitted by Mary into the garden of the house to which she belonged, contrive to scramble up the wall beneath the overhanging boughs of a large pear tree, which would effectually screen him from observation, there deliver his message, and arrange, if possible, an interview on behalf of Mr. Winkle for the ensuing evening at the same hour. Having made this arrangement with great dispatch, he assisted Mary in the long-deferred occupation of shaking the carpets. It is not half as innocent a thing as it looks, that shaking little pieces of carpet. At least, there may be no great harm in the shaking, but the folding is a very insidious process. So long as the shaking lasts, and the two parties are kept the carpet's length apart, it is as innocent an amusement as can well be devised. But when the folding begins, and the distance between them gets gradually lessened from 1/2 its former length to 1/4, and then to 1/8, and then to 1/16, and then to 1/32 if the carpet be long enough, it becomes dangerous. We do not know to a nicety how many pieces of carpet were folded in this instance, but we can venture to state that as many pieces as there were, so many times did Sam kiss the pretty housemaid. Mr. Weller regaled himself with moderation at the nearest tavern until it was nearly dusk, and then returned to the lane without the thoroughfare. Having been admitted into the garden by Mary, and receiving from that lady sundry admonitions concerning the safety of his limbs and neck, Sam mounted into the pear tree to wait until Arabella should come in sight. He waited so long without this anxiously expected event occurring that he began to think it was not going to take place at all, when he heard light footsteps upon the gravel, and immediately afterwards beheld Arabella walking pensively down the garden. As soon as she came nearly below the tree, Sam began, by way of gently indicating his presence, to make sundry diabolical noises, similar to those which would probably be natural to a person who had been afflicted with a combination of inflammatory sore throat, croup, and whooping cough from his earliest infancy. Upon this, the young lady cast a hurried glance towards the spot from whence the dreadful sounds proceeded, and her previous alarm being not at all diminished when she saw a man among the branches, she would most certainly have decamped and alarmed the house, had not fear fortunately deprived her of the power of moving, and caused her to sink down on a garden seat, which happened by good luck to be near at hand. "She's a-going off," soliloquized Sam in great perplexity. "What a thing it is, as these here young creatures will go a-fighting away just when they oughtn't to. Here, young woman, Miss Shawbones, Mrs. Winkle, don't!" Whether it was the magic of Mr. Winkle's name, or the coolness of the open air, or some recollection of Mr. Weller's voice that revived Arabella, matters not. She raised her head and languidly inquired, "Who's that, and what do you want?" "Hush!" said Sam, swinging himself onto the wall, and crouching there in as small a compass as he could reduce himself to. "Only me, miss, only me." "Mr. Pickwick's servant," said Arabella earnestly. "The what is I, miss?" replied Sam. "Is Mr. Winkle regularly showed up with desperation, miss?" "Ah," said Arabella, drawing nearer the wall. "Ah, indeed," said Sam. "We thought we should have been obliged to straight vesket him last night. He's been a raving all day, and he says if he can't see you afore tomorrow night's over, he wishes he may be something unpleasanted if he don't drown himself." "Oh, no, no, Mr. Weller," said Arabella, clasping her hands. "That's what he says, miss," replied Sam coolly. "He's a man of his word, and it's my opinion he'll do it, miss. Is he heard all about you from the Sawbones and Barnacles?" "From my brother," said Arabella, having some faint recognition of Sam's description. "I don't rightly know which is your brother, miss," replied Sam. "Is it the dirtiest one of the two?" Yes, Mr. Weller," returned Arabella. "Go on, make haste, pray." "Well, miss," said Sam, "he's heard all about it from him, and it's the governor's opinion that if you don't see him really quick, the Sawbones as we've been a-speaking on will get as much extra lead in his head as will rather damage the development of the organs if they ever put it in spirits outwards." "Oh, what can I do to prevent these dreadful quarrels?" exclaimed Arabella. "It's the suspicion of a prior attachment as is the cause of it all," replied Sam. "You'd better see him, miss." "But how? Where?" cried Arabella. "I dare not leave the house alone. My brother is so unkind, so unreasonable. I know how strange my talking thus to you must appear, Mr. Weller, but I am very, very unhappy." And here poor Arabella wept so bitterly that Sam grew chivalrous. "It may seem very strange talking to me about these here affairs, miss," said Sam with great vehemence, "but all I can say is that I'm not only ready but willing to do anything as will make matters agreeable, and if chucking either of them Sawbones out of window will do it, I'm the man." As Sam Weller said this, he tucked up his wristbands, at the imminent hazard of falling off the wall in so doing, to intimate his readiness to set to work immediately. Flattering as these professions of good feeling were, Arabella resolutely declined, most unaccountably as Sam thought, to avail herself of them. For some time she strenuously refused to grant Mr. Winkle the interview Sam had so pathetically requested. But at length, when the conversation threatened to be interrupted by the unwelcome arrival of a third party, she hurriedly gave him to understand, with many professions of gratitude, that it was barely possible she might be in the garden an hour later next evening. Sam understood this perfectly well, and Arabella, bestowing upon him one of her sweetest smiles, tripped gracefully away, leaving Mr. Weller in a state of very great admiration of her charms, both personal and mental. Having descended in safety from the wall, and not forgotten to devote a few moments to his own particular business in the same department, Mr. Weller then made the best of his way back to the bush, where his prolonged absence had occasioned much speculation and some alarm. "We must be careful," said Mr. Pickwick, after listening attentively to Sam's tale. "Not for our own sakes, but for that of the young lady. We must be very cautious." "We?" said Mr. Winkle, with marked emphasis. Mr. Pickwick's momentary look of indignation at the tone of this remark subsided into his characteristic expression of benevolence, as he replied, "We, sir. I shall accompany you." "You?" said Mr. Winkle. "Aye," replied Mr. Pickwick mildly. "In affording you this interview, the young lady has taken a natural, perhaps, but still a very imprudent step. If I am present at the meeting, a mutual friend who is old enough to be the father of both parties, the voice of calumny can never be raised against her hereafter." Mr. Pickwick's eyes lightened with honest exultation at his own foresight, as he spoke thus. Mr. Winkle was touched at this little trait of his delicate respect for the young protégé of his friend, and took his hand with a feeling of regard akin to veneration. "You shall go," said Mr. Winkle. "I will," said Mr. Pickwick. "Sam, have my great coat and shawl ready, and order a conveyance to be at the door tomorrow evening, rather earlier than is absolutely necessary, in order that we may be in good time." Mr. Weller touched his hat as an earnest of his obedience, and withdrew to make all needful preparations for the expedition. The coach was punctual to the time appointed, and Mr. Weller, after duly installing Mr. Pickwick and Mr. Winkle inside, took his seat on the box by the driver. They alighted, as had been agreed on, about a quarter of a mile from the place of rendezvous, and desiring the coachman to await their return, proceeded the remaining distance on foot. It was at this stage of the undertaking that Mr. Pickwick, with many smiles and various other indications of great self-satisfaction, produced from one of his coat pockets a dark lantern, with which he had specially provided himself for the occasion, and the great mechanical beauty of which he proceeded to explain to Mr. Winkle as they walked along, to the no small surprise of the few stragglers they met. "I should have been the better for something of this kind in my last garden expedition at night, eh, Sam?" said Mr. Pickwick, looking good-humouredly round at his follower, who was trudging behind. "Very nice things, if they are managed properly, sir," replied Mr. Weller. "But when you don't want to be seen, I think they're rather more useful out of the candles gone out than vintage light." Mr. Pickwick appeared to be struck by Sam's remark, for he put the lantern into his pocket again, and they walked on in silence. "Down here, sir," said Sam. "Let me lead the way. This is the lane, sir." Down the lane they went, and dark enough it was. Mr. Pickwick brought out the lantern once or twice as they groped their way along, and threw a very brilliant little tunnel of light before them, about a foot in diameter. It was very pretty to look at, but seemed to have the effect of rendering surrounding objects rather darker than before. At length they arrived at the large stone, and here Sam recommended his master and Mr. Winkle to seat themselves, while he reconnoitred and ascertained whether Mary was yet in waiting. After an absence of 5 or 10 minutes, Sam returned to say that the gate was opened and all quiet. Following him with stealthy tread, Mr. Pickwick and Mr. Winkle soon found themselves in the garden. Here everybody said "hush" a good many times, and that being done, no one seemed to have any very distinct apprehension of what was to be done next. "Is Miss Allen in the garden yet, Mary?" inquired Mr. Winkle, much agitated. "I don't know, sir," replied the pretty housemaid. "The best thing to be done, sir, will be for Mr. Weller to give you a hoist up into the tree, and perhaps Mr. Pickwick will have the goodness to see that nobody comes up the lane, while I watch at the other end of the garden. Goodness gracious, what's that?" "That here blessed lantern will be the death on us all," exclaimed Sam peevishly. "Take care what you are doing on, sir. You are sending a blaze of light right into the back parlour window." "Dear me," said Mr. Pickwick, turning hastily aside. "I didn't mean to do that." "Now it's in the next house, sir," remonstrated Sam. "Bless my heart!" exclaimed Mr. Pickwick, turning round again. "Now it's in the stable, and they'll think the place is afire," said Sam. "Shut it up, sir, can't you?" "It's the most extraordinary lantern I ever met with in all my life," exclaimed Mr. Pickwick, greatly bewildered by the effects he had so unintentionally produced. "I never saw such a powerful reflector." "It'll be one too powerful for us if you keep blazing away in that manner, sir," replied Sam, as Mr. Pickwick, after various unsuccessful efforts, managed to close the slide. "There's the young lady's footsteps. Now, Mr. Winkle, sir, up with you." "Stop, stop," said Mr. Pickwick. "I must speak to her first. Help me up, Sam." "Gently, sir," said Sam, planting his head against the wall, and making a platform of his back. "Step atop of that 'ere flower pot, sir. Now then, up with you." "I'm afraid I shall hurt you, Sam," said Mr. Pickwick. "Never mind me, sir," replied Sam. "Lend him a hand, Mr. Winkle, sir. Steady, sir, steady. That's the time of day." As Sam spoke, Mr. Pickwick, by exertions almost supernatural in a gentleman of his years and weight, contrived to get upon Sam's back, and Sam gently raising himself up, and Mr. Pickwick holding on fast by the top of the wall, while Mr. Winkle clasped him tight by the legs, they contrived by these means to bring his spectacles just above the level of the coping. "My dear," said Mr. Pickwick, looking over the wall and catching sight of Arabella on the other side. "Don't be frightened, my dear. 'Tis only me." "Oh, pray go away, Mr. Pickwick," said Arabella. "Tell them all to go away. I am so dreadfully frightened. Dear, dear Mr. Pickwick, don't stop there. You will fall down and kill yourself. I know you will." "Now, pray don't alarm yourself, my dear," said Mr. Pickwick soothingly. "There is not the least cause for fear, I assure you. Stand firm, Sam," said Mr. Pickwick, looking down. "All right, sir," replied Mr. Weller. "Don't be longer than you can conveniently help, sir. You're rather heavy." "Only another moment, Sam," replied Mr. Pickwick. "I merely wish to know, my dear, that I should not have allowed my young friend to see you in this clandestine way, if the situation in which you are placed had left him any alternative. And lest the impropriety of this step should cause you any uneasiness, my love, it may be a satisfaction to you to know that I am present. That's all, my dear." "Indeed, Mr. Pickwick, I am very much obliged to you for your kindness and consideration," replied Arabella, drying her tears with her handkerchief. She would probably have said much more, had not Mr. Pickwick's head disappeared with great swiftness, in consequence of a false step on Sam's shoulder, which brought him suddenly to the ground. He was up again in an instant, however, and bidding Mr. Winkle make haste and get the interview over, ran out into the lane to keep watch, with all the courage and ardor of a youth. Mr. Winkle himself, inspired by the occasion, was on the wall in a moment, merely pausing to request Sam to be careful of his master. "I'll take care on him, sir," replied Sam. "Leave him to me." "Where is he? What's he doing, Sam?" inquired Mr. Winkle. "Bless his old gaiters," rejoined Sam, looking out of the garden door. "He's a keeping guard in the lane with that 'ere dark lantern like an amiable Guy Fawkes. I never see such a fine creature in all my days. Blessed if I don't think his heart must have been born 25 years out of his body at least." Mr. Winkle stayed not to hear the encomium upon his friend. He had dropped from the wall, thrown himself at Arabella's feet, and by this time was pleading the sincerity of his passion with an eloquence worthy even of Mr. Pickwick himself. While these things were going on in the open air, an elderly gentleman of scientific attainments was seated in his library 2 or 3 houses off, writing a philosophical treatise, and ever and anon moistening his clay and his labours with a glass of claret from a venerable-looking bottle which stood by his side. In the agonies of composition, the elderly gentleman looked sometimes at the carpet, sometimes at the ceiling, and sometimes at the wall, and when neither carpet, ceiling, nor wall afforded the requisite degree of inspiration, he looked out of the window. In one of these pauses of invention, the scientific gentleman was gazing abstractedly on the thick darkness outside, when he was very much surprised by observing a most brilliant light glide through the air a short distance above the ground, and almost instantaneously vanish. After a short time the phenomenon was repeated, not once or twice, but several times. At last the scientific gentleman, laying down his pen, began to consider to what natural causes these appearances were to be assigned. They were not meteors. They were too low. They were not glowworms. They were too high. They were not will-o'-the-wisps. They were not fireflies. They were not fireworks. What could they be? Some extraordinary and wonderful phenomenon of nature, which no philosopher had ever seen before. Something which it had been reserved for him alone to discover, and which he should immortalize his name by chronicling for the benefit of posterity. Full of this idea, the scientific gentleman seized his pen again, and committed to paper sundry notes of these unparalleled appearances, with the date, day, hour, minute, and precise second at which they were visible, all of which were to form the data of a voluminous treatise of great research and deep learning, which should astonish all the atmospherical wiseacres that ever drew breath in any part of the civilized globe. He threw himself back in his easy-chair, wrapped in contemplations of his future greatness. The mysterious light appeared more brilliantly than before, dancing to all appearances up and down the lane, crossing from side to side, and moving in an orbit as eccentric as comets themselves. The scientific gentleman was a bachelor. He had no wife to call in and astonish, so he rang the bell for a servant. "Prufel," said the scientific gentleman, "there is something very extraordinary in the air tonight. Did you see that?" said the scientific gentleman, pointing out of the window as the light again became visible. "Yes, I did, sir." "What do you think of it, Prufel?" "Think of it, sir?" "Yes, you have been bred up in the country. What should you say was the cause of those lights now?" The scientific gentleman smilingly anticipated Pruffel's reply that he could assign no cause for them at all. Pruffel meditated. "I should say it was thieves, sir," said Pruffel at length. "You are a fool, and may go downstairs," said the scientific gentleman. "Thank you, sir," said Pruffel, and down he went. But the scientific gentleman could not rest under the idea of the ingenious treatise he had projected being lost to the world, which must inevitably be the case, if the speculation of the ingenious Mr. Pruffel were not stifled in its birth. He put on his hat, and walked quickly down the garden, determined to investigate the matter to the very bottom. Now, shortly before the scientific gentleman walked out into the garden, Mr. Pickwick had run down the lane as fast as he could to convey a false alarm that somebody was coming that way, occasionally drawing back the slide of the dark lantern to keep himself from the ditch. The alarm was no sooner given than Mr. Winkle scrambled back over the wall, and Arabella ran into the house. The garden gate was shut, and the 3 adventurers were making the best of their way down the lane when they were startled by the scientific gentleman unlocking his garden gate. "Hold hard," whispered Sam, who was of course the first of the party. "Show a light for just 1 second, sir." Mr. Pickwick did as he was desired, and Sam, seeing a man's head peeping out very cautiously within half a yard of his own, gave it a gentle tap with his clenched fist, which knocked it with a hollow sound against the gate. Having performed this feat with great suddenness and dexterity, Mr. Weller caught Mr. Pickwick up on his back, and followed Mr. Winkle down the lane at a pace which, considering the burden he carried, was perfectly astonishing. "Have you got your wind back again, sir?" inquired Sam when they had reached the end. "Quite now," replied Mr. Pickwick. "Then come along, sir," said Sam, setting his master on his feet again. "Come between us, sir. Not half a mile to run. Think you're wind in the cup, sir. Now for it." Thus encouraged, Mr. Pickwick made the very best use of his legs, and it may be confidently stated that a pair of black gaiters never got over the ground in better style than did those of Mr. Pickwick on this memorable occasion. The coach was waiting, the horses were fresh, the roads were good, and the driver was willing. The whole party arrived in safety at the bush before Mr. Pickwick had recovered his breath. "In with you at once, sir," said Sam, as he helped his master out. "Don't stop a second in the street out of that air exercise. Beg your pardon, sir," continued Sam, touching his hat as Mr. Winkle descended. "Hope there weren't a priory attachment, sir." Mr. Winkle grasped his humble friend by the hand and whispered in his ear, "It's all right, Sam, quite right." Upon which Mr. Weller struck 3 distinct blows upon his nose in token of intelligence, smiled, winked, and proceeded to put the steps up with a countenance expressive of lively satisfaction. As to the scientific gentleman, he demonstrated in a masterly treatise that these wonderful lights were the effect of electricity, and clearly proved the same by detailing how a flash of fire danced before his eyes when he put his head out of the gate, and how he received a shock which stunned him for a full quarter of an hour afterwards, which demonstration delighted all the scientific association beyond measure, and caused him to be considered a light of science ever afterwards. Chapter 39 introduces Mr. Pickwick to a new, and it is hoped not uninteresting scene, in the great drama of life. The remainder of the period which Mr. Pickwick had assigned as the duration of the stay at Bath passed over without the occurrence of anything material. Trinity term commenced. On the expiration of its first week, Mr. Pickwick and his friends returned to London, and the former gentleman, attended of course by Sam, straightway repaired to his old quarters at the George and Vulture. On the 3rd morning after their arrival, just as all the clocks in the city were striking 9 individually, and somewhere about 900 collectively, Sam was taking in the air in George Yard when a queer sort of fresh-painted vehicle drove up, out of which there jumped with great agility, throwing the reins to a stout man who sat beside him, a queer sort of gentleman who seemed made for the vehicle, and the vehicle for him. The vehicle was not exactly a gig, neither was it a stanhope. It was not what is currently denominated a dog-cart, neither was it a taxed cart, nor a chay-cart, nor a guillotined cabriolet. And yet it had something of the character of each and every of these machines. It was painted a bright yellow, with the shafts and wheels picked out in black, and the driver sat in the orthodox sporting style, on cushions piled about 2 feet above the rail. The horse was a bay, a well-looking animal enough, but with something of a flash and dog-fighting air about him, nevertheless, which accorded admirably both with the vehicle and his master. The master himself was a man of about 40, with black hair and carefully combed whiskers, dressed in a particularly gorgeous manner, with plenty of articles of jewelry about him, all about 3 sizes larger than those which are usually worn by gentlemen, and a rough greatcoat to crown the whole. Into one pocket of this greatcoat he thrust his left hand the moment he dismounted, while from the other he drew forth, with his right, a very bright and glaring silk handkerchief, with which he whisked a speck or 2 of dust from his boots, and then crumpling it in his hand, swaggered up the court. It had not escaped Sam's attention that, when this person dismounted, a shabby-looking man in a brown greatcoat, shorn of divers buttons, who had been previously slinging about on the opposite side of the way, crossed over, and remained stationary close by. Having something more than a suspicion of the object of the gentleman's visit, Sam preceded him to the George and Vulture, and, turning sharp round, planted himself in the center of the doorway. "Now, my fine fellow," said the man in the rough coat, in an imperious tone, attempting, at the same time, to push his way past. "Now, sir, what's the matter?" replied Sam, returning the push with compound interest. "Come, none of this, my man. This won't do with me," said the owner of the rough coat, raising his voice and turning very white. "Here, Smouch!" "Well, what's amiss here?" growled the man in the brown coat, who had been gradually sneaking up the court during this short dialogue. "Only some insolence of this young man's," said the principal, giving Sam another push. "Come, none of this here gammon," growled Smouch, giving him another, and a harder one. This last push had the effect which it was intended by the experienced Mr. Smouch to produce, for while Sam, anxious to return the compliment, was grinding that gentleman's body against the doorpost, the principal crept past and made his way to the bar, whither Sam, after bandying a few epithetical remarks with Mr. Smouch, followed at once. "Good morning, my dear," said the principal, addressing the young lady in the bar with Botany Bay ease and New South Wales gentility. "Which is Mr. Pickwick's room, my dear?" "Show him up," said the barmaid to a waiter, without deigning another look at the exquisite, in reply to his inquiry. The waiter led the way upstairs as he was desired, and the man in the rough coat followed, with Sam behind him, who, in his progress up the staircase, indulged in sundry gestures indicative of supreme contempt and defiance, to the unspeakable gratification of the servants and other lookers-on. Mr. Smouch, who was troubled with a hoarse cough, remained below and expectorated in the passage. Mr. Pickwick was fast asleep in bed when his early visitor, followed by Sam, entered the room. The noise they made in so doing awoke him. "Shaving water, Sam," said Mr. Pickwick from within the curtains. "Shave you directly, Mr. Pickwick," said the visitor, drawing one of them back from the bed's head. "I've got an execution against you at the suit of Bardell. Here's the warrant. Come and please. Here's my card. I suppose you'll come over to my house." And giving Mr. Pickwick a friendly tap on the shoulder, the sheriff's officer, for such he was, threw his card on the counterpane and pulled a gold toothpick from his waistcoat pockets. "Namby's the name," said the sheriff's deputy, as Mr. Pickwick took his spectacles from under the pillow and then put them on to read the card. "Namby, Bell Alley, Coleman Street." At this point, Sam Weller, who had had his eyes fixed hitherto on Mr. Namby's shining beaver, interfered. "Are you a Quaker?" said Sam. "I'll let you know who I am before I've done with you," replied the indignant officer. "I'll teach you manners, my fine fellow, one of these fine mornings." "Thank ye," said Sam. "I'll do the same for you. Take your hat off." With this, Mr. Weller, in the most dexterous manner, knocked Mr. Namby's hat to the other side of the room with such violence that he had very nearly caused him to swallow the gold toothpick into the bargain. "Observe this, Mr. Pickwick," said the disconcerted officer, gasping for breath. "I've been assaulted in the execution of my duty by a servant in your chamber. I'm in bodily fear. I call you to witness this." "Don't witness nothing, sir," interposed Sam. "Shut your eyes up tight, sir. I'd pitch him out a window, only he couldn't fall far enough because the lady's outside." "Sam," said Mr. Pickwick in an angry tone, as his attendant made various demonstrations of his hostilities, "if you say another word or offer the slightest interference with this person, I discharge you that instant." "But sure," said Sam. "Hold your tongue," interposed Mr. Pickwick. "Take that hat up again." But this Sam flatly and positively refused to do, and, after he had been severely reprimanded by his master, the officer, being in a hurry, condescended to pick it up himself, venting a great variety of threats against Sam meanwhile, which that gentleman received with perfect composure, merely observing that if Mr. Namby would have the goodness to put his hat on again, he would knock it into the latter end of next week. Mr. Namby, perhaps thinking that such a process might be productive of inconvenience to himself, declined to offer the temptation, and soon after called up Smouch. Having informed him that the capture was made, and that he was to wait for the prisoner until he should have finished dressing, Namby then swaggered out and drove away. Smouch requesting Mr. Pickwick, in a surly manner, to be as alive as he could, for it was a busy time, drew up a chair by the door, and sat there till he had finished dressing. Sam was then dispatched for a hackney coach, and in it the triumvirate proceeded to Coleman Street. It was fortunate the distance was short, for Mr. Smouch, besides possessing no very enchanting conversational powers, was rendered a decidedly unpleasant companion in a limited space by the physical weakness to which we have elsewhere averted. The coach, having turned into a very narrow and dark street, stopped before a house with iron bars to all the windows, the doorposts of which were graced by the name and title of Namby, officer to the sheriffs of London. The inner gate having been opened by a gentleman who might have passed for a neglected twin brother of Mr. Smouch, and who was endowed with a large key for the purpose, Mr. Pickwick was shown into the coffee room. This coffee room was a front parlor, the principal features of which were fresh sand and stale tobacco smoke. Mr. Pickwick bowed to the three persons who were seated in it when he entered, and having dispatched Sam for Perker, withdrew into an obscure corner, and from thence looked with some curiosity upon his new companions. One of these was a mere boy of 19 or 20, who, though it was yet barely 10 o'clock, was drinking gin and water and smoking a cigar, amusements to which, judging from his inflamed countenance, he had devoted himself pretty constantly for the last year or two of his life. Opposite him, engaged in stirring the fire with the toe of his right boot, was a coarse, vulgar young man of about 30, with a sallow face and harsh voice, evidently possessed of that knowledge of the world and captivating freedom of manner which is to be acquired in public-house parlors and at low billiard tables. The third tenant of the apartment was a middle-aged man in a very old suit of black, who looked pale and haggard, and paced up and down the room incessantly, stopping now and then to look with great anxiety out of the window as if he expected somebody, and then resuming his walk. "You'd better have the loan of my razor this morning, Mr. Azraelay," said the man who was stirring the fire, tipping the wink to his friend the boy. "Thank you, no. I shan't want it. I expect I shall be out in the course of an hour or so," replied the other in a hurried manner. Then, walking again up to the window, and once more returning disappointed, he sighed deeply and left the room, upon which the other two burst out into a loud laugh. "Well, I never saw such a game as that," said the gentleman who had offered the razor, whose name appeared to be Price. "Never!" Mr. Price confirmed the assertion with an oath, and then laughed again, when of course the boy, who had thought his companion one of the most dashing fellows alive, laughed also. "You'd hardly think, would you now," said Price, turning towards Mr. Pickwick, "that chap's been here a week yesterday, and never once shaved himself yet, because he feels so certain he's going out in half an hour's time, that he thinks he may as well put it off till he gets home." "Poor man," said Mr. Pickwick. "Are his chances of getting out of his difficulties really so great?" "Chances be damned," replied Price. "He hasn't half the ghost of one. I wouldn't give that for his chance of walking about the streets this time 10 years. With this, Mr. Price snapped his fingers contemptuously and rang the bell. "Give me a sheet of paper, Crooky," said Mr. Price to the attendant, who in dress and general appearance looked something between a bankrupt grazier and a drover in a state of insolvency. "And a glass of brandy and water, Crooky, do you hear? I'm going to write to my father, and I must have a stimulant, or I shan't be able to pitch it strong enough into the old boy." At this facetious speech, the young boy, it is almost needless to say, was fairly convulsed. "That's right," said Mr. Price. "Never say die. All fun, ain't it?" "Prime," said the young gentleman. "You have some spirit about you, you have," said Price. "You've seen something of life." "I rather think I have," replied the boy. He had looked at it through the dirty panes of glass in a bar door. Mr. Pickwick, feeling not a little disgusted with this dialogue, as well as with the air and manner of the two beings by whom it had been carried on, was about to inquire whether he could not be accommodated with a private sitting-room, when 2 or 3 strangers of genteel appearance entered, at sight of whom the boy threw his cigar into the fire, and whispering to Mr. Price that they had all come to make it all right for him, joined them at a table in the further end of the room. It would appear, however, that matters were not going to be made all right quite so speedily as the young gentleman anticipated, for a very long conversation ensued, of which Mr. Pickwick could not avoid hearing certain angry fragments regarding dissolute conduct and repeated forgiveness. At last there were very distinct allusions made by the oldest gentleman of the party to one Whitecross Street, at which the young gentleman, notwithstanding his primeness and his spirit, and his knowledge of the life into the bargain, reclined his head upon the table, and howled dismally. Very much satisfied with this sudden bringing down of the youth's valor, and effectually lowering of his tone, Mr. Pickwick rang the bell, and was shown at his own request into a private room furnished with a carpet, table, chairs, sideboard, and sofa, and ornamented with a looking-glass and various old prints. Here he had the advantage of hearing Mrs. Namby's performance on a square piano overhead, while the breakfast was getting ready, and when it came, Mr. Perker arrived also. "Aha, my dear sir," said the little man. "Nailed at last, eh? Come. I'm not sorry for it either, because now you'll see the absurdity of this conduct. I've noted down the amount of the taxed costs and damages for which the casa was issued, and we had better settle at once and lose no time. Namby has come home by this time, I dare say. What say you, my dear sir? Shall I draw a cheque, or will you?" The little man rubbed his hands with affected cheerfulness as he said this, but glancing at Mr. Pickwick's countenance, could not forbear at the same time casting a desponding look towards Sam Weller. "Perker," said Mr. Pickwick, "let me hear no more of this, I beg. I see no advantage in staying here, so I shall go to prison tonight." "You can't go to Whitecross Street, my dear sir," said Perker. "Impossible. There are 60 beds in a ward, and the bolt's on 16 hours out of the 24. "I should rather go to some other place of confinement if I can," said Mr. Pickwick. "If not, I must make the best I can of that." "You can go to the Fleet Street, my dear sir, if you're determined to go somewhere," said Perker. "That'll do," said Mr. Pickwick. "I'll go there directly I've finished my breakfast." Stop, my dear sir! Not the least occasion for being in such a violent hurry to get into a place that most other men are as eager to get out of," said the good-natured little attorney. "We must have a habeas corpus. There'll be no judge at chambers till 4 o'clock this afternoon. You must wait till then." "Very good," said Mr. Pickwick, with unmoved patience. "Then we will have a chop here at 2. See about it, Sam, and tell them to be punctual." Mr. Pickwick remaining firm, despite all the remonstrances and arguments of Perker, the chops appeared and disappeared in due course. He was then put into another hackney coach and carried off to Chancery Lane, after waiting half an hour or so for Mr. Namby, who had a select dinner party and could on no account be disturbed before. There were 2 judges in attendance at Sergeant's Inn, 1 King's Bench and 1 Common Pleas, and a great deal of business appeared to be transacting before them, if the number of lawyers' clerks who were hurrying in and out with bundles of papers afforded any test. When they reached the low archway which forms the entrance to the inn, Perker was detained a few moments parleying with the coachman about the fare and the change, and Mr. Pickwick, stepping to one side to be out of the way of the stream of people that were pouring in and out, looked about him with some curiosity. The people that attracted his attention most were 3 or 4 men of shabby genteel appearance, who touched their hats to many of the attorneys who passed, and seemed to have some business there, the nature of which Mr. Pickwick could not divine. They were curious-looking fellows. One was a slim and rather lame man in rusty black and a white neckerchief. Another was a stout, burly person, dressed in the same apparel, with a great reddish-black cloth round his neck. A third was a little weazened, drunken-looking body with a pimply face. They were loitering about, with their hands behind them, and now and then, with an anxious countenance, whispered something in the ear of some of the gentlemen with the papers as they hurried by. Mr. Pickwick remembered to have very often observed them lounging under the archway when he had been walking past, and his curiosity was quite excited to know to what branch of the profession these dingy-looking loungers could possibly belong. He was just about to propound the question to Namby, who kept close beside him, sucking a large gold ring on his little finger, when Perker bustled up, and observing that there was no time to lose, led the way into the inn. As Mr. Pickwick followed, the lame man stepped up to him, and civilly touching his hat, held out a written card, which Mr. Pickwick, not wishing to hurt the man's feelings by refusing, courteously accepted and deposited in his waistcoat pocket. "Now," said Perker, turning round before he entered one of the offices, to see that his companions were close behind him. "In here, my dear sir. Hello, what do you want?" This last question was addressed to the lame man, who, unobserved by Mr. Pickwick, made one of the party. In reply to it, the lame man touched his hat again with all imaginable politeness, and motioned towards Mr. Pickwick. No, said Perker with a smile. "We don't want you, my dear friend. We don't want you." "I beg your pardon, sir," said the lame man. "The gentleman took my card. I hope you will employ me, sir." The gentleman nodded to me. "I'll be judged by the gentleman himself." "You nodded to me, sir?" "Pooh, nonsense. You didn't nod to anybody, Pickwick. A mistake, said Perker. "The gentleman handed me his card," replied Mr. Pickwick, producing it from his waistcoat pocket. "I accepted it as the gentleman seemed to wish it. In fact, I had some curiosity to look at it when I should be at leisure. The little attorney burst into a loud laugh, and returning the card to the lame man, informed him it was all a mistake, whispering to Pickwick as the man turned away in dudgeon that he was only a bail. "A what?" exclaimed Mr. Pickwick. "A bail," replied Perker. "A bail?" "Yes, my dear sir. 6 of 'em here. Bail you to any account, and only charge 50 crowns. Curious trade, isn't it?" said Perker, regaling himself with a pinch of snuff. "What? Am I to understand that these men earn a livelihood by waiting about here to perjure themselves before the judges of the land at the rate of 50 crowns a crime?" exclaimed Mr. Pickwick, quite aghast at the disclosure. "Why, I don't exactly know about the perjury, my dear sir," replied the little gentleman. "Harsh word, my dear sir, very harsh word indeed. It's a legal fiction, my dear sir, nothing more." Saying which, the attorney shrugged his shoulders, smiled, took a pinch of snuff, and led the way into the office of the judge's clerk. This was a room of specially dirty appearance, with a very low ceiling and old paneled walls, and so badly lighted that although it was broad day outside, great tallow candles were burning on the desks. At one end was a door leading to the judge's private apartment, round which were congregated a crowd of attorneys and managing clerks, who were called in the order in which their respective appointments stood upon file. Every time this door was opened to let a party out, the next party made a violent rush to get in, and as in addition to the numerous dialogues which passed between the gentlemen who were waiting to see the judge, a variety of rather personal squabbles ensued between the greater part of those who had seen him, there was as much noise as could well be raised in an apartment of such confined dimensions. Nor were the conversations of these gentlemen the only sounds that broke upon the ear. Standing on a box behind a wooden bar at another end of the room was a clerk in spectacles who was taking the affidavits, large batches of which were from time to time carried into the private room by another clerk for the judge's signature. There were a large number of attorneys' clerks to be sworn, and it being a moral impossibility to swear them all at once, the struggles of these gentlemen to reach the clerk in spectacles were like those of a crowd to get in at the pit door of a theater when His Most Gracious Majesty honors it with his presence. Another functionary from time to time exercised his lungs in calling over the names of those who had been sworn for the purpose of restoring to them their affidavits after they had been signed by the judge, which gave rise to a few more scuffles. And all these things going on at the same time occasioned as much bustle as the most active and excitable person could desire to behold. There were yet another class of persons, those who were waiting to attend summonses their employers had taken out, which it was optional to the attorney on the opposite side to attend or not, and whose business it was from time to time to cry out the opposite attorney's name to make certain that he was not in attendance without their knowledge. For example, leaning against the wall, close beside the seat Mr. Pickwick had taken, was an office lad of 14, with a tenor voice, and near him a common law clerk with a bass one. The clerk hurried in with a bundle of papers, and stared about him. "Sniggle and blank," cried the tenor. "Pocket and snob," growled the bass. "Stumpy and Dakin," said the newcomer. Nobody answered, and the next man who came in was hailed by the whole three, and he in his turn shouted for another firm, and then somebody else roared in a loud voice for another, and so forth. All this time, the man in the spectacles was hard at work swearing the clerks, the oath being invariably administered without any effort at punctuation, and usually in the following terms. "Take the book in your right hand. This is your name and handwriting. You swear that the contents of your affidavit are true, so help you God. A shilling you must get. Change, I haven't got it." "Well, Sam," said Mr. Pickwick, "I suppose they are getting the habeas corpus ready." "Yes," said Sam, "and I wish they'd bring out the habeas corpus. It's really unpleasant keeping us waiting here. I'd have got 6 habeas corpuses ready, packed up, and all by this time." What sort of cumbrous and unmanageable machine Sam Weller imagined a writ of habeas corpus to be does not appear, for Mr. Perker at that moment walked up and took Mr. Pickwick away. The usual forms having been gone through, the body of Samuel Pickwick was soon afterwards confided to the custody of the tipstaff, to be by him taken to the warden of the Fleet Prison, and there detained until the amount of the damages and costs in the action of Bardell against Pickwick was fully paid and satisfied. "And that," said Mr. Pickwick, laughing, "will be a very long time. Sam, call another hackney coach. Perker, my dear friend, goodbye." "I shall go with you, and see you safe there," said Perker. "Indeed," replied Mr. Pickwick, "I would rather go without any other attendant than Sam. As soon as I get settled, I will write and let you know, and I shall expect you immediately. Until then, goodbye." As Mr. Pickwick said this, he got into the coach which had by this time arrived, followed by the tipstaff. Sam having stationed himself on the box, it rolled away. "A most extraordinary man, that," said Perker, as he stopped to pull on his gloves. "What a bankrupt he'd make, sir," observed Mr. Loughton, who was standing near. "How he would bother the commissioners. He'd set 'em at defiance if they talked of committing him, sir." The attorney did not appear very much delighted with his clerk's professional estimate of Mr. Pickwick's character, for he walked away without deigning any reply. The hackney coach jolted along Fleet Street, as hackney coaches usually do. The horses went better, the driver said, when they had got anything before them. They must have gone at a most extraordinary pace when there was nothing. And so the vehicle kept behind a cart. When the cart stopped, it stopped, and when the cart went on again, it did the same. Mr. Pickwick sat opposite the tipstaff, and the tipstaff sat with his hat between his knees, whistling a tune and looking out of the coach window. Time performs wonders, and, by the powerful old gentleman's aid, even a hackney coach gets over half a mile of ground. They stopped at length, and Mr. Pickwick alighted at the gate of the Fleet. The tipstaff, just looking over his shoulder to see that his charge was following close at his heels, preceded Mr. Pickwick into the prison. Turning to the left, after they had entered, they passed through an open door into the lobby, from which a heavy gate opposite to that by which they had entered, and which was guarded by a stout turnkey with the key in his hand, led at once into the interior of the prison. Here they stopped while the tipstaff delivered his papers, and here Mr. Pickwick was apprised that he would remain until he had undergone the ceremony, known to the initiated as sitting for your portrait. "Sitting for my portrait?" said Mr. Pickwick. "Having your likeness taken, sir," replied the stout turnkey. "We're capital hands at likenesses here. Take 'em in no time, and always exact. Walk in, sir, and make yourself at home." Mr. Pickwick complied with the invitation, and sat himself down, when Mr. Weller, who stationed himself at the back of the chair, whispered that the sitting was merely another term for undergoing an inspection by the different turnkeys, in order that they might know prisoners from visitors. "Well, Sam," said Mr. Pickwick, "then I wish the artists would come. This is rather a public place." "They won't be long, sir, I dare say," replied Sam. "There's a Dutch clock, sir." "So I see," observed Mr. Pickwick. "And a birdcage, sir," said Sam. "Veils within veils. A prison in a prison, ain't it, sir?" As Mr. Weller made this philosophical remark, Mr. Pickwick was aware that his sitting had commenced. The stout turnkey, having been relieved from the lock, sat down and looked at him carelessly from time to time, while a long, thin man who had relieved him thrust his hands beneath his coat-tails, and planting himself opposite, took a good long view of him. A third, rather surly-looking gentleman, who had apparently been disturbed at his tea, for he was disposing of the last remnant of a crust and butter when he came in, stationed himself close to Mr. Pickwick, and, resting his hands on his hips, inspected him narrowly, while the two others mixed with the group, and studied his features with most intent and thoughtful faces. Mr. Pickwick winced a good deal under the operation, and appeared to sit very uneasily in his chair, but he made no remark to anybody while it was being performed, not even to Sam, who reclined upon the back of the chair, reflecting partly on the situation of his master, and partly on the great satisfaction it would have afforded him to make a fierce assault upon all the turnkeys there assembled, one after the other, if it were lawful and peaceable to so do. At length the likeness was completed, and Mr. Pickwick was informed that he might now proceed into the prison. "Where am I to sleep tonight?" inquired Mr. Pickwick. "Well, I don't rightly know about tonight," replied the stout turnkey. "You'll be chummed on somebody tomorrow, and then you'll be all snugged comfortable. The first night's generally rather unsettled, but you'll be set all squares tomorrow." After some discussion, it was discovered that one of the turnkeys had a bed to let, which Mr. Pickwick could have for that night, and he gladly agreed to hire it. "If you come with me, I'll show it to you at once," said the man. "It ain't a lodging, but it's an out-and-outer to sleep in. This way, sir." They passed through the inner gate, and descended a short flight of steps. The key was turned after them, and Mr. Pickwick found himself, for the first time in his life, within the walls of a debtor's prison.